Howdy guys and gals, it's your old pal Jony Horror, bringing you an all-new episode of the Jony Horror Podcast. Continuing through our rundown of M. Night Shyamalan originals, we have arrived at one of the most divisive films in his catalog, the bedtime story surrounding a sea nymph, an unassuming apartment custodian, and a villainous wolf. 2006's fairytale film, Lady in the Water, a film that upon its release fell insanely short of box office expectations, was lambasted by critics, and fared slightly, if little better, with audiences. Nearly 20 years later, Kalen and I sit down to discuss the picture's faults, its successes, and how we personally feel about the film. We may even butt heads a couple of times along the way. So with that fun little foreshadow to look forward to, sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of the Jony Horror Podcast. Welcome, Jony Horror Heads, to another episode of the Jony Horror Podcast. I am one of your hosts this evening, Jony Horror, and tonight we are discussing yet another M. Night Shyamalan film, 2006's Lady in the Water. And I don't know about you, buddy, but if I found Bryce Dallas Howard in my pool, I would just be much more like happy than Paul Giamatti is in this film. But that perhaps that's a discussion for another time. Ladies and gentlemen, you hear him, you see him. My co-host Kalen Behrman. How are you tonight, sir?
I'm good, brother.
Good, man.
Ready
Good.
to rock.
Hell yeah. So right out the gate, I just have to ask you, how do you feel about swimming pools in general? Are you a fan? Do you like going swimming? Do you have any interesting stories in regards to swimming pools?
I mean, one time when I was like 4, my mom threw me in a swimming pool. She thought it'd be funny, and I thought I was gonna die. So
Did you not know how to swim?
No, at 4 I did not.
So, yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah. So definitely some traumatic feelings about swimming pools, but I like swimming pools. You and I actually used to hang out in the swimming pool all the time when we lived in the same condo complex.
Yeah.
Me and this guy would literally just go and like hang out in the swimming pool and tread water, and then just like hang out like a normal hangout, just like talking about bullshit, but like in a swimming pool, because we were cool like that.
We were treading water and making each other laugh, which is
That's right.
Just a fantastic ab workout, ladies and
Right.
gentlemen.
No, yeah. I mean, I think it was really good for our health for sure.
Mm-hmm. You're laughing, you're getting sunshine. There's some legitimate dopamine going on right there. So
yeah.
Definitely recommend that. Were you like me where like you just like, even though your mind knew that there's no plausible way that this could happen, but you're just afraid that there was going to be a shark in the pool at any point in your childhood? Or are you too rational for that?
I think I'm a little too rational for that one.
That's fair. That is very fair.
I was afraid of sharks in the ocean for sure.
Oh, yeah.
But the pool, no, I kind of knew that there wouldn't be a shark in the pool.
No, that's good. That's good. I'm definitely still not dealing with that fear when I go swimming, like doing laps by myself, you know? Kalen, can you just paint me a picture of the first time you saw Lady in the Water? And while I don't want you to tell me your thoughts right out the gate, can you maybe just tell me whether or not they have changed since your initial watch?
Only a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Only a little bit. I still land pretty closely to where I landed on the day the movie came out.
Mm-hmm.
I went to go see Lady in the Water in Long Beach. Anyone who knows Long Beach knows, like, God, my geography is not great, but there's a corner at the edge of Long Beach where there's a big movie theater, and there's a In-N-Out Burger right over there. I went and saw it at that theater with all my friends. I think it had been my idea to go see it. Like, I think I'd been the one the most gung-ho. But, you know, in 2006, like, everyone was kind of a movie fan. It wasn't like a niche thing. Yeah. So all of my friends liked Shyamalan. Everyone liked The Sixth Sense. Everyone liked Signs. So when I told my fans, hey, it's The Sixth Sense guy, it's a Signs guy, let's go see this movie, all my friends were down, and we mobbed it like, 8, 10 deep. We all rolled over there and went and watched this movie together. Yeah. And on the way in, there were some people we knew coming out, and they were like, don't go see this movie. It's a waste of your money. Don't go see it. And I remember being like really annoyed with them. Like, hey, fuck you. Like, let me go decide for myself if I want to see this movie, you know?
Mind. Yeah.
But, yep.
Did you guys go to In-N-Out afterwards?
Oh, we must have. Yeah, we probably did. We went to that In-N-Out pretty often.
What a great place to put either of those two things, depending on which one was there first. You know, just have. I feel like that In-N-Out probably does gangbusters being right next to a movie theater, because you know every time a picture lets out, someone's going to In-N-Out. You know?
Oh yeah.
So
everyone's going to In-N-Out.
Genius. And you're very right. Like, this is a time period I remember vividly, like specifically when I was living with my dad between like 2004 and 2005. I went to the movies every week, sometimes twice a week, to see different movies. It didn't even have to be anything like, didn't have to be anything that I was even really interested in. I mean, I went and saw Little Black Book with Brittany Murphy, for Christ's sake. Like, I was just always at the movies.
Yeah.
And yeah, the movies were just a place that you went all the time. And I think it was very much during that stretch for sure. Cause I think there was time before maybe where like going to the movies was a little bit more special and stuff like that, a little bit more of an event. And then movies became much more casual. And maybe now to the point where they're too casual, where like you don't even feel obligated to go to the movies because you know it's going to come out on digital.
Oh yeah. I feel like that's what most people do now.
Yeah.
But more people than not, if they're interested in a movie, it'll be cool. I'll see it when it comes out on digital. Yeah. But I'll see it when it's on Netflix.
And I mean, you and I can speak to this, but like specifically the last time we went and saw an M. Night Shyamalan movie together, last year's Trap, people can really ruin it for you, ruin the movie going experience. So that's like one of the reasons why it's like, unless it's just something that I need to see and I will not let it be spoiled for me, like in terms of people, you know, telling me stuff. Like, if it's not that, if it's not like a must-see opening weekend thing, then I can usually wait until it comes out on digital, you know, 2, 3, 4 weeks afterwards. And I mean, you and I have discussed this. I know that you're still a little bit more dialed into the theater going experience.
No, I think that every movie is better in the theater. Like, every movie, you're gonna have a better first watch experience in the theater. I don't care. Like, I have a big ass TV. I've got a good sound bar. Like, I have a great home theater setup. It's not the same as going to the movies. There's also something special about the movies where you have to put your fucking phone down and pay attention to the actual thing that's happening, and everyone is doing that at the same time, which is very rare today. So I think it's by far the best way to experience a movie. And on a more practical level, movies need the theatrical experience. Like, without theaters, if we're all just paying $10 a month for streaming services, the amount of money and the quality of films is going to like what we know as movies today will disappear without the movie theaters. Yeah. So I am an ardent supporter of the movie theater. If there's any movie that I have any serious interest in, so I'm going to say anywhere above a 5 out of 10 interest.
Yeah.
I want to go see it in theaters. I don't always manage to because real life is complicated.
Yeah.
But like, given the time and money, I'd go see anything that I had a significant amount of interest in theaters, and I'd probably go opening night.
Yeah, I can agree with that for sure. Just myself, you said it best. Life is complicated. You know, I have a kid. I have a spouse who I really enjoy seeing most movies with, and she enjoys seeing most movies with me. So trying to manage our schedules in that regard can be a little tedious. But every now and then I'm fortunate enough to be able to go, you know, see it with a buddy of mine, such as yourself or fellow Jony Horror host, Brian Calvert. And that's always fun too. But still got to schedule those things out, and it's not always opening night for sure.
Yep.
But I digress. We're here talking about movies, so I think we shall continue to discuss movies in our first section, the Jony Horror News. Here at the Jony Horror News, we give updates on trailers, events, and more, and it's basically just an excuse to talk about horror movies and cinema in general. So I have a couple of things that I want to discuss, and maybe I can bounce these off of you, sir.
Please do.
So while I have not seen this trailer myself, perhaps you have seen it from the creators of Talk to Me, Bring Her Back, the latest film from that directing duo, just dropped a trailer, I think within the last 48 hours or so. Have you watched it? Do you know anything about this film? Are you interested in seeing this film?
I have not watched the latest trailer release. If I'm not mistaken, I believe there was some kind of a teaser before.
Yeah, I think I did watch that. Yeah, I watched that. That was just basically images. It didn't really do, it's like 30 seconds, 45 seconds long. It's pretty quick.
Yeah, it was a small tease. Yeah, I'm interested in this. I will go see this. I'll go see this theatrically. I saw a lot of potential in these guys when I saw Talk to Me. I didn't think super highly of Talk to Me as its own film, but I did see, you know, up and coming filmmakers with potential. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I honestly couldn't remember if we discussed Talk to Me, and now I'm thinking that perhaps we didn't, because I thought that you were a fan of it. Not to say that you're not. I liked the film myself, but my God, the hype surrounding it. Like, you would have thought that these guys were like, the way it was talked about, it was almost like these guys were the next Wes Craven, the next John Carpenter. And I saw the film and I'm like, all right, cool. I've seen this story before. I've seen these beats, and I've seen it done cooler in movies like Insidious that have essentially the same thing, where you're dealing with communicating with the dead, and it, you know, gets you trapped in this realm, or opens up this realm. And something like Insidious just has so much more style and like great production design and pacing. While, like, I really did like the a lot of the lore for Talk to Me. The main character was just, I could not get past the constant selfish choices, and I'm like, why would I root for this person? All this person does is do everything for themselves. And when you just consistently do that, and you're not charming like Ray Liotta in Goodfellas, like I'm not gonna root for you, you know?
Mhm.
Um, but that being said, there were some genuinely creepy elements and moments in Talk to Me, and I am very curious to see what these guys do next. I think I'm probably going to stay away from the trailer on this because I'd like to go into it very much like I did with Talk to Me. Somehow I managed to see Talk to Me like, I don't know, 5, 6 months after it was in theaters.
Oh wow.
And I knew pretty much nothing about it when I watched it and
Mhm.
was a blind watch, which I just feel like is so much more fun these days. But another one that I have seen the trailer for, and I'm very excited, and maybe you're familiar with this as the video game. I remember our good friend TK told me about this many, many years ago, this video game, and he actually got me to play it for a little bit. Until Dawn is coming out.
Yeah.
And have you seen the trailer? Have you played the game? What are your thoughts on this?
Nope.
No.
Never seen the trailer. Never played the game. Probably a little bit less interested than I would normally be because it's a video game adaptation,
Yeah.
which isn't really fair. But that's just
Yeah.
like how I'm. That's just like the gut instinct. It's like, oh, video game adaptation. Okay, we'll see.
Yeah.
You know. But do you know who's directing that one?
David F. Sandberg,
Sandberg.
I believe is his name.
Sandberg is doing it. Okay.
Yeah, from
I,
Lights Out and
yeah.
Annabelle.
Uh-huh.
The second one. Why can't I think of what it's called? Annabelle. Oh, I can see it in my mind. So it's not the first Annabelle, and it's not Annabelle Comes Home.
Uh-huh.
Somebody's yelling at me right now, going, "It's this, it's this, it's this." But he
Yeah.
did both of those, and they're both very creepy films. And
Mm-hmm.
then lately, he's been doing Shazam.
Well, and
For
I really like the first one of those too.
yeah, I thought the first one was actually a lot of fun.
So yeah, I like him. I'll go see this for sure.
You're familiar with the premise at all?
It's like a live die repeat kind of thing, right?
Yeah, very much so.
They
So
have to find a way to survive until dawn, but we're doing a little bit of a Groundhog's Day thing.
yeah,
I mean,
but
as we're sitting here talking through this, I'm like, yeah, this actually sounds pretty cool.
yeah, and like I said, I remember TK telling me about this and explaining the game to me as I'm playing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, that's actually a really cool concept. I know myself, I'm not going to play this video game long enough to really experience it, but that looks really cool. And when I watched this trailer, having completely forgot about this game and everything, I watched the trailer and it slowly came back to me. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is that game that TK told me about. I think he said it would make a great movie, and this looks really cool. Not only does it like look creepy and that it could have some really fun scares, but the concept is just great
So
for
that's a
for
cool
a horror
concept.
movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's a good concept.
Aside from Happy Death Day, that takes the same sort of groundhog premise in a slasher format that's not a very serious film but more fun. I think this is going to be a very cool avenue to explore that Groundhog Day premise.
Well, those guys' video games, they also did something called The Quarry, which I did play a little bit of The Quarry. Their games are essentially movies.
Yeah.
They're just choose your own adventure movies. And my understanding critically is that they're pretty good. So yeah, I think there's reason to be hopeful about that movie for sure.
Great. Good. That's what I want to hear. That one comes out later this month. It comes out at the end of April.
Oh wow.
And then finally, the last film I want to talk about, maybe you've heard some news about this, about how they're bringing everyone and their mother who is alive and dead in regards to this franchise back for Scream 7. Have you heard about all the casting news for this film?
Yep, I have.
So we're getting, not only are we getting Nev Campbell back as Sidney Prescott, which I must say I'm not terribly thrilled with. Like, I love Nev Campbell. I love the character of Sidney, but I also feel like, how many times can we do this with this character? Um, but it was very interesting when they started announcing that Matthew Lillard was going to be back, um and
Can I ask a
several
quick
other
question?
dead characters. Yeah.
I missed. I think I missed Scream 4. Did Matthew Lillard ever come back?
No, he never came back.
So he's been dead since the 90s.
Yes, since the very first Scream.
Okay, just checking.
And they brought Skeet back for 5 and 6 as Ghost, which is fun. Is a fun way to expand cool. That. But they announced that David Arquette is coming back, and he very much died a terrible death in Scream 5. Spoilers for the Scream franchise, folks.
Yeah, spoilers, guys. They're not all alive.
Yeah, so a lot of these dead characters are coming back, and I'm curious what your thoughts are as to what their role is going to be. Do you think they're all going to be ghosts? Do you think it's going to be a flashback? Do you think this is some sort of meta thing where it's going to be like a new Nightmare scenario where these people are going to be playing themselves, a movie inside of a movie sort of thing? What do you think?
I think the only version of this that's not complete hack nonsense is if they are sort of ghosts, memories, like something haunting Sidney. If that's the case, I could see, doing something decent with that. If they're actually just resurrecting all these characters from the dead, I could not be less interested in seeing that.
I've heard there is a running suspicion that they could be like AI generated killers. Like they could be using AI to generate these faces, and like I would assume use that as to hide the identity of the killer, and they're using these past killers and victims as to cover up who the actual killer is. And if that's the case, that could be a fairly interesting avenue to take it, particularly in this AI age that we're living in.
Sure.
But yeah, I don't know. We won't know until I think January of next year, early next year is when this one's releasing. But I'm curious. I'll tell you that much. With all this and all these announcements, I wasn't particularly interested when they just said they were bringing back Nev Campbell. I just felt like I don't know what more we can do with poor Sidney at this stage in the game. But now it's definitely got me interested to see what's going to happen. And briefly before we move on to our next section, have you watched anything good lately?
Yeah, so I've already seen a couple of good horror movies this year. The first one that I want to recommend, if you have the patience for a cerebral movie that sort of pays itself off over time, Soderbergh's recent film, The Presence, was really good.
Yeah, I wanted to see that.
They shot that movie on a cheap camera for like $2 million in like 3 weeks in one location. And the pitch of the film is that it's a family that moves into a new house, and there is a presence, a ghost, a poltergeist, a spirit of some sort in the house. And the camera, the point of view of the camera is the presence. So you, the audience, are the presence.
Yeah.
Now that sounds kind of neat, but then you wonder, okay, well, how do you do a 90-minute movie that way? They did it. And I'm not going to give anything away, but I'm just going to say that it's very good. That one's also written by David Koepp, and yeah, I thought the movie was pretty dope, and I would recommend everyone go see that one. Cool. And then I saw Companion. Have you seen Companion yet?
I have seen Companion.
I loved Companion.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun with that one.
Yeah.
I wish like hell that the marketing hadn't spoiled the,
Same. Yeah, twist. So I'm not going to spoil that for anyone, but that's going to be one of my movies of the year, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely one that I'm going to be buying a hard copy of. I really enjoyed that movie.
Same. So strong recommendation, guys. Watch that movie.
So since we last talked, I mean, I've seen a handful of stuff in the theaters, which was great. We saw Wolfman, which I liked. I posted a review of it. I did genuinely like it. I'll be buying that one as well. It's not as good as Invisible Man or even Lee Winnell's film that he did before Invisible Man, Upgrade, but I'm
those are both pretty good though.
Those are both excellent films.
That's a pretty high bar. Yeah.
And I would just say like Wolfman is like, this is gonna sound like I'm shitting on it, but I'm not. It's nothing special. But I do think that given like time, it'll be like one of those fun movies that you can like pull out and show your friends who've never seen it. Be like, oh dude, you haven't seen this version of Wolfman? It's like, it's pretty solid. It's not like a terribly scary movie, but it's a really cool twist on a werewolf tale. So it's just like a fun, different telling of a werewolf movie. And we just don't have a lot of those anymore. So I think it's just a cool little nugget in that regard. We also saw Companion in theaters. I really wanted to see The Presence, but just couldn't make it work. I think it was out of theaters before I even.
It was right in and out.
Yeah. And we saw The Monkey from Osgood Perkins, based on the Stephen King short story. I had a blast with that movie.
Okay.
That movie was all kinds of silly and fun and laugh out loud nonsense.
Awesome. I haven't seen that one only because of scheduling. I very much wanted to catch that in theaters. Yeah.
Definitely worth a watch. I'm
glad you liked it.
I haven't even noticed if it's been on. I feel like I have not seen it available for.
I don't think it is yet
for digital download yet, which is good for them. We watched Hard Eyes at Home, which was more of a romantic comedy than anything, but it took the meet cute idea and put it in a slasher film, which is great. Totally a fun watch. And
I thought that was a pretty fun watch.
Yeah, did you see it?
Yeah, we saw that in theaters.
Yeah, we tried to, but we couldn't make it work, so we ended up watching it at home as soon as it was available. And like I said, it's just silly fun. Nothing. A very harmless film.
Right. Probably a one and done for me, but I did enjoy it.
Yeah, same. Yeah. And that's coming from someone who like I really wanted to see it because it was like I love holiday themed slashers. That's just my bread and butter. It's my favorite subgenre of horror. And so in those terms, I was it just wasn't what I wanted from the film, but I didn't hold that against it. It was, I stayed away from the marketing, so I had no idea really what I was in for. But, and then a couple of nights ago, we watched one that had been on both of our lists for a while, 2016 Korean film called The Wailing. And it is a 2.5 hour odyssey of mystery, ghosts, religion, and fucking tragedy. And it is I would give that movie like a 9.5 out of 10. There were points where I'm like, where is this going and why is this why is this still going? Like, haven't we figured all this stuff out yet? But by the end of the movie, my jaw was on the floor. So, if you haven't seen The Wailing and you aren't a bitch who doesn't like to read while you watch a movie, then I definitely recommend The Wailing. But we got to get this show on the road. So we are leaving the newsstand and we are going to jump on over to the nearest bar because we are getting our drink on, ladies and gentlemen. Here at the bar, we're going to swing by Johnny's Well, where Kalen and I discuss our two favorite things, drinking and movieing. So, buddy, are you drinking anything delicious tonight? What do you got over there? I see you sipping on stuff.
I've got a it won't come through. I've got a peach Bellini flavored bubbly.
Ooh.
It's peach, pineapple, and mango flavored sparkling water.
I like
no libations this evening.
They have the gall to make it a peach Bellini, like you're even gonna taste anything other than, just the peach and whatever other flavors. Like, are they gonna try and convince you that there's some sort of Prosecco flavor in there?
They're whispering alcohol in your ear. They're going, alcohol. Yeah.
Well, I myself have a very delicious vanilla Coke Zero, which pretty much tastes exactly like the real thing. Like Coke Zero, which I think is pretty solid. I still know it's not Coke, but when I drink these vanilla Coke Zeros, it tastes exactly like a vanilla Coke to me. So
I haven't drinking real Coke in so long that I can't even remember.
Forgot what it tastes like.
Yeah, but when I drink a Coke Zero, it hits the spot for me the way that I want it to. And I definitely appreciate the vanilla Cokes.
So we recently discovered that Starry, makes a 0-calorie version, and I feel like lemon lime sodas, they just never taste good when they're not the real thing. But I shit you not, Starry, it tastes exactly like a Sprite.
Okay.
It's perfect. I cannot recommend it enough. It is refreshing as hell. So, yeah.
Starry, sponsor us.
No plugs. But seriously, do yourself a favor, go buy some. It's 0 calories, folks. It's not harming you. You would have to drink
fantastic.
I don't know, like 50 a week for it to do anything to you. I swear, go get them. But we're not talking sugar-free soda anymore here, gang. We're talking about getting loaded and watching some M. Night. Kalen, if you were going to host the party and the theme for the party was Lady in the Water, you made everybody either dress up like they were a handyman at a rundown apartment complex or a fucking mermaid, and you had dangly stuff like seaweed and shit like that, and you had your dog dressed up like a scrunt or whatever the fuck the thing is called in this movie, running around all green and tangly, and you had all that going on. What drink are you serving your guests?
You just made me realize something terrible, but can you believe there's not a porn parody for this movie?
Yeah, seriously.
Dude. It writes itself. Jesus. It really anyway. Moving right along from that, I apologize, audience. We are better than that here.
Are we?
I thought so. Maybe not.
Not tonight.
So yeah, I came up with a drink here. In keeping with one of the themes of the film, it's not a theme of the film. It's just an aesthetic of the film. I am making a bourbon peanut butter Captain Crunch cereal milk. So you get some peanut butter Captain Crunch. You toast it a little bit. You macerate it in some whole milk. You strain it. add a little bit of sugar and salt, and you put that on the rocks with some bourbon.
Sounds delicious.
It is.
Do tell the audience how you find that is keeping with the aesthetic of the film.
Well, just there's one of the key characters in the film is a little boy who
cereal
really loves his cereal.
Yeah.
And I couldn't think of anything that involved a pool that wasn't completely obnoxious.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, you know, I like where your head's at. That sounds really good. Actually sounds really, really good and not too heavy given the ingredients, you know? I bet that'd be tasty as hell, actually. My mouth is actually like starting to like pucker up because I'm like imagining.
Oh yeah, no, it's tasting. It's dessert. Like that drink is like a treat. Yeah. Majorly.
Mm-hmm. So I did go the obnoxious route. I started looking up all the blue drinks and then was just completely unsatisfied with all of the recipes. So I was like, fuck it. I'll make my own. So what we're going to do is we're going to get ourselves some silver tequila. I'm going to go with El Jimador. It's my favorite. Fuck you. I don't care if it's cheap. It's goddamn delicious.
Hey, if anyone out there doesn't know, bartenders, we're all about cheap but good.
Yes, damn straight.
Yeah.
Folks, you can get a bottle of El Jimador for less than $20 at most stores.
Yep.
You can get a bottle of I'm not going to say high quality, but quality tequila.
Quality tequila.
An entire bottle for what it costs for one cocktail at a standard restaurant these days, folks. Mm-hmm. Do yourself a favor, drink at home. It's cheaper.
No. So, go out to the bar, order a lot of stuff, and tip very well. Don't try to save money. That's silly.
Yeah, what am I doing? I'm shooting my own self in my own goddamn foot. So we're going to get silver tequila. We're going to get some lime juice, some sweet and sour. We're going to get some pineapple juice, some blue curacao, and a little bit of melon liqueur. So we're going to start with 1.5 ounces of that El Jimador. We are going to do 1/2 ounce of lime juice. We're going to do 1/2 ounce of sweet and sour, and we're going to shake that up. We're going to, we're going to add 1/4 ounce of blue curacao. Then we're going to shake it up. We're going to strain it over ice. Then we are going to do about 1/4 ounce of the pineapple juice. We're just going to layer that on top very lightly. And then we are going to take 1/4 ounce of that Midori melon liqueur, if you will, the green stuff. And we are just going to layer that on top of the pineapple juice. And we're going to call that drink chlorine. There you are, ladies and gentlemen. I imagine, I've never tasted it, but it sounds delicious to me. And it would be in keeping with the blue pool stuff of this film. And
cool stuff.
It will probably get you pretty drunk right out the gate. There's enough stuff going on there, I think. So, those are our drinks. And if you're anything like myself, you might get a little bit hungry while you're sipping on stuff. I like to get myself a nice, it's not Bulgarian pretzel, but there's some B word. Bavarian, thank you.
Bavarian
pretzel, those big ones that they have at all the restaurants now. Some of them even come on hooks and weird shit like that.
Yeah.
Like something out of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. They just hung up a pretzel and they killed it, man. They're delicious. But a lot of horror movies I would not consider to be eating movies. Texas Chainsaw Massacre being one of them, actually, even though some barbecue does go well with that. Kalen, do you consider Lady in the Water to be an eating movie? Is there anything in this film that you're like, no, gross out, you shouldn't eat with this movie?
No. This movie's quite tame. You can eat with it.
Maybe maybe Reggie's arm. That thing grosses me out, but
it's weird, but I don't find myself perturbed.
fair enough. Well, now that we are nice and liquored up and feeling full, we are moving on to our next section. Blah, blah, blah. You've seen it all before. What? Here in blah, 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 you've seen it all before. We discuss the plot, the production, and basically if this is something that we have seen before, if this is a concept that we are familiar with. Kalen, as I do, I'm going to hand the plot off to you so you can describe this film for those who have not seen it and maybe those who have seen it and are still like, I don't know what went on in that movie. Can you please explain it to me, Kalen?
Yeah, I think the very simple pitch would be that this is a movie about an apartment superintendent, a custodian of an apartment who discovers a naked young woman.
Now you can see why
in their pool.
Why is there no porn?
Right.
Right there, that first sentence alone.
It's very right. He discovers a very young naked woman coming out of their pool, assuming that she's just some drunk or drugged up college student. He, gives her clothes to make her warm and looks to, just generally be a decent human being, take care of her. And it turns out she is not what she seems. She is much more than she seems. And the story is much more than that. And it evolves into a very unique, contemporary, modern, I said contemporary and modern, fairy tale of sorts.
Indeed. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Now, given all of the things that we hear about and see in this film, such as sea nymphs and narfs and scrunts, and men who only work out one arm, can you think of any other movie that even remotely resembles this? Is this something we have seen before in any sort?
Only in like a purely, like in a blueprint, a schematic sense, it's a fairy tale.
Yeah.
So we've seen things that work this way before, but never in this context.
Yeah.
Not in this setting. It's very unique in the way that it presents itself, for sure.
Shyamalan did say that when he was getting inspired for this, that his brain was going to places like E.T. and The Princess Bride in terms of creating like an original fairy tale, basically. And in those terms, I agree with him. This is a very original concept. And as we go through the production here, we're going to figure out how he came up with that. So, for the very first time on the Jony Horror Podcast, Jony Horror did some motherfucking research, ladies and gentlemen. So tonight, we will not be straight up pulling from Wikipedia because they had like a paragraph that told me nothing about this movie. So I was able to come across various things, including a 30-minute archive making of the film, which was helpful. And much to my chagrin, asked Google several questions and got the robots to help me fill in some of the gaps here. So, without any further ado, the production of Lady in the Water. Folks, here we go. So, M. Night Shyamalan said that he had the story in his back pocket for some time, stating that it was a bedtime story he would tell his children, and that it would go on and develop into this kind of odyssey. And his kids suggested that he should make it into a movie. M. Night worked on the story for about a year, first taking notes, writing an outline, then penning the script. He would share it with his close friends and producing partners, and they would give it back saying, I don't get it, it's not there. Shyamalan would then rewrite and retool the story, as he said, trying to see it through their eyes, until eventually it clicked, stating that it took him 13 drafts to arrive at the final script. According to the book, The Man Who Heard Voices, or How M. Night Shyamalan Risked His Career on a Fairy Tale, a biological story about the events surrounding the making of this film, one of the reasons why Shyamalan decided to part with Disney was because Disney's president of development, Nina Jacobson, took her son to a party instead of staying home to read the script for Lady in the Water. Shyamalan had personally curried her. What's the word? Couriered. There you go. Thank you. Sorry. English is dumb at times, guys, I tell you. To her. And to add insult to injury, she did not like it anyways. Shyamalan went off in a huff, and the creative differences he had purportedly had with Disney was simply that he felt there was nothing creative about Disney anymore. He took the script to Warner Brothers instead, but without the usual marketing campaign that Disney promoted for his other films, Lady in the Water would go on to not be as commercially successful. So that bit I did find fairly interesting, that and I read this in several different places, that he just felt like Disney as a company was not honoring people's creative aspirations, which I would say that in the modern age that we're living in, nearly 20 years later, that could not be more true. Given that most of what Disney churns out is remakes of classic cartoons and superhero stuff
and unnecessary sequels.
Yes.
And their superhero content started in the aughts and the 2010s, being made by filmmakers with specific creative visions, and now it's all one unified tone and structure, right? And so it's all kind of, even if it's not the same thing over again, it's the same thing over again.
Yes.
And you look at stuff like Pixar, which makes some of the most incredible and original films in the history of film, and they're making Coco Part 2, right? They're being forced to make Coco Part 2. So yeah, that's definitely I would argue maybe the most difficult studio to really bring, of the major film studios, probably the most difficult one to really bring individualistic creative vision to.
Yes.
Yeah.
So M. Night offered the role of Story to Bryce Dallas Howard before he had written the script, stating that after he had finished his previous film, The Village, he was showing it to her and her family, and said that while he was still in the early stages of crafting the story, he would like for her to be in the film. Howard agreed to star in the film a year before she would ever read the script. That's a long time to wait for that phone call, you know? Just be like, yeah, cool, yeah, I'm there, and I mean, she does get, I mean, it's great for her because she gets a pretty interesting role out of it. Shyamalan got the idea to cast Paul Giamatti after seeing Sideways. Have you seen Sideways, sir?
I'm sure that I have. Which one is that?
The wine country one. Paul Giamatti goes with his buddy to wine country, and they get into shenanigans. Love Sideways, great film.
Who's the co? Was it who was the co? Do you know off the top? It's okay if you don't.
Yeah, no, I
Was
know
it
him,
Philip
and
Seymour Hoffman?
no, it's
No.
I can't
Maybe
think
I
of his
haven't seen that one.
name right now, and it
I know
bothers me.
I know I've seen clips of it because like I can imagine right now the movie you're talking about, Pauly Giamatti, and he's got like wine and
Thomas
the
Hayden Church, I believe,
Thomas Hayden Church.
the guy who played Sandman in Spider-Man 3.
Sandman. Yeah. Okay. I
Um,
don't think I've seen that one all the way through.
it's a great film. So he showed his producer Sam Mercer an ad for the film in the paper, and Mercer later stated that after seeing the ad, he immediately agreed that Giamatti was Cleveland. Paul Giamatti said that when M. Night offered him the role, he told Giamatti that the film would be weirder than his other films. Giamatti later elaborated that this was even before he was told about the wolf, the mermaid, the eagle, and the monkeys. Um, the film shot in Levittown, Pennsylvania, and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Our boy just loves him some Philadelphia. Um, with a $70 million production budget, and over the course of approximately 2 months, starting in May of 2005 and finishing that July. And this film came out like a year after they finished principal photography, which I think is wild, man. The reason for the film's 70 million production budget, despite being set in one location, was because the apartment complex and pool were built for the film. The crew worked around the clock to build the entire structure from scratch in 8 weeks. Some of the film was shot in Levittown, Pennsylvania, at a Jacobson logistics warehouse site. Director M. Night Shyamalan had committed to using filming locations in Pennsylvania. The set built on the warehouse site includes the apartment complex and half a city block row of houses. That's kind of like what we see through the gates of the cove. Occasional footage was shot inside the overflow area of the warehouse. Most of the filming was completed after Jacobson work hours. Shyamalan said that he saw the film's apartment complex, The Cove, as a metaphor for America, a place that would find a lot of immigrants and a lot of people in different stages of their assimilation to this culture. And you can see that. I mean, the apartment complex is big, and we meet a good chunk of characters. This is a pretty large cast, but there's all people from different backgrounds, which does lend itself to what he is suggesting there. After filming wrapped, Shyamalan moved into post-production, which he stated took a considerable amount of time, 6 months in total. That is a long post-production, man. And I tell you what, they just don't make them like that anymore. There's no way a film like this would I just don't. First of all, there's no way a film like this would get made today.
It just wouldn't get made.
Second of all, there's no way that it would have a post-production of 6 months, man. That's crazy.
Well, I mean, if we're counting the VFX, I could see that taking 6 months.
But think of Marvel movies in this day and age. Think of like even something like Alien Romulus, where they didn't even get to. That is a massive, big budget studio film, and they said they weren't even happy with the effects, that they went back and retooled it for the DVD release. You know?
Wow. Jeez.
That's the time we're living in, man. I tell you.
That is wild.
While also expressing that the editing, sound effects, and musical stages allowed for significant alteration of the film's effects, potentially changing it up to 50% from his original vision during filming. I'm not quite sure what that is referencing. I couldn't quite figure it out myself, because a lot of the stuff that I saw in this documentary like the wolf and everything very much was a lot of the time was a practical thing. You can definitely tell that there are CG moments, but stuff that I thought was CG, when I see it on the documentary, the way the wolf moves and everything, that's like what it looked like in the movie too. So I feel like there's less CG in this movie than I originally thought. So I'm not entirely sure what it's saying about his original vision. Perhaps that the editing is probably more what it's referencing. I know that he talked at length about his editor and the good relationship that he had with his editor and how much he trusted her and how he would bring stuff to her and he could tell when she didn't like it and she would often suggest he do something else. Uh, and apparently they had a pretty good rapport. So, I mean, you know, that a lot can change. The flow of a film can change significantly in the editing process for sure.
I mean, they say you make a movie 3 times, right? You write it, you shoot it, and then you edit it, and that's yeah.
And I mean, that's like in my experience doing, you know, personal stuff, you know, amateur filmmaking, that like there's a joy in that kind of, you're all every time you're just kind of like chiseling away a little bit more to get to the final product. And finally, Shyamalan used the metaphor of a jazz film to highlight the film's improvisational and unpredictable nature, suggesting that it didn't follow a conventional narrative structure. He also considers it to be one of his more personal, if not most personal pictures, a sentiment compounded by the fact that it originated as a bedtime story for his children and would go on to be fully realized as such when he released a 72-page children's book version of the narrative to coincide with the film's release. So, again, no, aside from the shift of studios, you know, before filming ever took place, there's no big drama on the sets or anything like that. As we always say, from everything that you and I can tell, Shyamalan runs a pretty great set. Again, going through the documentary and everything, everyone just looks like they're having a blast. He said that him and Paul Giamatti got along great, that they had similar senses of humor. And yeah, everyone in just looks like they're having a good time making it, and it does. I liked that, finding out that it was a bedtime story that he would tell his children. Because as I was watching the film, I was like, how much of this is like based on like lore and stuff like that? How much of this is like based off of ancient, you know, myths and this, that, or the other? And like none of it was. It was all just based on a story he would tell his kids that he just continued to elaborate on. Any thoughts on any of that?
I actually find all that really interesting. I love that he wrote 13 drafts.
Yeah.
I love that. I really think there's something too, like if you've made up your mind you're going to tell a story, like you've already stubbornly come to that conclusion, don't settle for a bad story.
Yeah.
Keep working on it. Like go until you get it. You know what I mean? Like I believe in that. Like don't just release some bullshit, you know? I also think it's really interesting because it's an interesting give and take on the two sides of sort of, I think an important thing about being any kind of storyteller, any kind of filmmaker, writer, what have you. I think an important thing is being willing to accept feedback from people who are not you.
Yeah.
Because no matter how brilliant you are too close to it to see it the same way someone else does.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a time in every creative's life where someone tells you this doesn't work.
Yeah.
And there's no way of knowing, but sometimes that person is right.
Yeah.
And you got to let this go because it's actually not good. And sometimes you have to be like, no, you're wrong. You don't get it. And you have to go with it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And I can, in my mind, think of clear examples of both, of those situations occurring specifically for other people. For me, I usually just listen to people when they tell me something is bad because I have no self-esteem. But this is an interesting one because I feel like there would be people on both sides of the aisle on this. There would be people arguing that Shyamalan should have just said, you know what, I didn't have it. This wasn't good enough. And I should have just let this go and moved on to something else. And I think there are people who would stand on the other side of the aisle saying like, no, he was right. He absolutely should have made this. This deserved to be made. This deserved to be told.
Well, again, I'll have my own thoughts on that later on. But when you do these documentaries that are going to be, you know, going on to the film itself, like very rarely is anyone, they all like, if you think of any documentary that is specifically attached to like the DVD film, not like a, retrospective, you know, 20 years later, looking back on it, that's when you get all the juice. That's when you get all the drama, you know, that's when everyone's like, oh yeah, that dude, he was a fuckface, man. I hated working with that guy. We did the job because we had to, but like, yeah. And that's where you get stuff like, yeah, Robert Shaw and Richard Dreyfuss did not like each other at all. They did not get along well. And then you go, oh, well, that added to the film for sure. So with the documentary that I watched, I take everything with a grain of salt. And of course, people are talking about it. They're giving interviews before this film has been released. You know, it's all in the lead up to this movie. And whether or not they believed in it or not, they invested their time, money, and energy in it. So they're not gonna speak poorly about it on something that's going on the DVD, you know?
Right.
So
absolutely.
In those terms, we gotta, you know, consider the source. But I don't want to jump into the bad stuff quite yet. Now that we've covered the plot and the production of the movie, we are on to our next section, which is all positive and rainbows and butterflies and eagles and fucking narfs and shit. We're headed on into the good stuff. Here at The Good Stuff, we discuss the things we liked about the movies. Pretty straightforward. Kalen, tell me something you like about Lady in the Water.
Movie had a beautiful score.
God, I got that one too. That's actually one of my favorite things about this movie.
Absolutely beautiful score.
One of the tidbits that I picked up from that doc as well was that James Newton Howard started scoring the movie before they were even in production.
Okay.
That's just like a boss move right there.
Yeah. I mean, I love that. I love that. He's like, this is what we're doing. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful music in this. I think, honestly, as far as the emotion of this film is concerned and just the vibe of it, this score does a lot of the heavy lifting for me personally, I think.
I agree. I think, I think that this score elevates this movie. I do. But I also think it fits the movie. Like it's the right music for this story. Yes. And part of making a movie is getting the right music for the story.
I agree. And man, gosh, can I just vent about this? I miss when movies had great scores. Man, they feel so generic these days. Am I wrong in that? Do you notice that too?
I would argue that more often than they used to. Yeah. I still catch great scores where I'm like, oh wow, this is a great score. But yeah, I feel like it's more was more of a standard. It's more of a cookie cutter kind of. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I feel like so many scores are just meant to just blend in with the movie rather than
Oh
stand
yeah,
out from
stand
the
out.
movie.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Like when was the last time we got something like? I mean, really, probably the one person who's still pulling it off is Hans Zimmer. Excuse me. Um, he still manages to work in themes, but man, everyone else just it blends into the movie. It doesn't stand out. Like I was
I
listening
think
to.
that I think Michael Giacchino is still killing it.
He does pretty good too, actually.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, the Batman is the prime
That
example.
score, yeah, that score
Yes,
was
that
fantastic.
is without a doubt. That and the Dune scores, like those are the
Yep,
ones in the last like 5 years for me.
yeah,
Those are the ones that I'm still
definitely.
like, yeah, those are great.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I was listening to the ET theme the other night, and I was just like, man, we just don't get this anymore. We don't.
Yeah,
I can just listen to that theme, and man, I fucking hate riding bikes, man. I have no desire to ride a bike ever. I listen to that ET theme. I'm like, man, I'm gonna go hop on my bike right now. I'm gonna
yep.
go launch off the side of a cliff.
That's right.
um. So yeah, the score in this film is absolutely excellent. It is probably my favorite part of the movie, in all honesty.
Mhm.
My second favorite part is weird saying that because he's so great and he really is second to none in my personal opinion. Paul Giamatti is just so good
Mhm.
in this movie. He's so good in every
Mhm.
movie.
Mhm. Oh
I
yeah.
I think he just brings gravitas and believability to his character where so many of these other characters for me feel like caricatures, cardboard cutouts, or they're overdoing it in so many ways, which is not necessarily their fault. I think there is a lot of trouble with script stuff, but he grounds this movie so much and gives such a heartfelt and sincere performance. Like he pretty much always does that in his movies. The first thing I ever saw Paul Giamatti in was Big Fat Liar. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie with Frankie Muniz and Amanda Bynes, but
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
he plays a douchebag movie producer.
When did that come out?
God, like 2002 or some shit.
I might have actually. I'm gonna look that up real fast.
Were you in that movie?
I might have been on the set. Yeah.
But that's like one of the few movies where he's like a very outlandish character, and then like the next movie I ended up seeing him in was Saving Private Ryan. He plays, one of the soldiers that they bump into, and he's just as outlandish and over the top. And I was just like, oh wow, this guy just does this all the time, just
Mhm.
yelling and being crazy.
Mhm.
And then the just couldn't be further from the truth. He's got such range. Um, did you see The Holdovers?
Nope.
Holy shit, dude, you gotta watch The Holdovers.
Really?
That is
Okay.
a great film.
So
Christmas
it
movie.
it looked good to me, but it just looked like it might be a little bit too slow for me to get into right now. Like that might be one that takes a little while to get around to.
Yeah, no, I get that. And like I said, it's a Christmas movie, and I watched it this past year.
Mhm.
And it's a good Christmas movie because you're not wrong. It is just this slow sort of drama that plays out, and it's very heartwarming and an excellent story. And Giamatti gives just a fantastic performance. I cannot recommend that movie enough, though. Yeah, watch it at Christmas time. It'll suit you.
Okay. I think my favorite Paul Giamatti performance might be Cinderella Man,
Oh
which is
God,
actually
I
directed by her father, by
yeah,
Bryce Dallas
Ron
Howard's
Howard.
father.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
think he got nominated for Best Supporting Actor for that
I
role
hope
too, if I
so. He
remember
deserved
right.
it. Yeah.
Um, Look that up. Confirm that for me, will you? Yeah, dude, I just rewatched that probably like a month and a half ago. Rewatched Cinderella Man. God damn, that movie is great. How's that
I mean,
movie?
that movie is
Victor?
that movie's phenomenal. It's
Yeah.
an all-time great to me.
I know you're over there looking away at stuff. How do you feel about Paul Giamatti and Lady in the Water?
He did get nominated for Cinderella Man.
Thank you very much.
I thought he was incredible. I think he's brilliant. I think he's just a top level actor. I think he can do anything. Like, he's good in everything. I don't think I've ever been disappointed by him. I think the first movie I saw him in was The Negotiator.
I've not seen that.
Wow. All right.
Great film.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, The Negotiators. I mean, if next time you're itching for like a 90s style crime thriller, that's a great one.
That's the one. Okay, good to know.
Yeah, but yeah, no, I love him. I think he's great in everything, and I think that as the star of this movie, he, like you said, he brings gravitas, he brings emotion, he brings relatability. He makes you care. He brings empathy.
Yeah,
I think he's great as the lead of this movie. I think he brings a lot to it. Yeah.
He's not the type of guy to get put in the lead role of.
They would never give him
blockbuster, you know?
They'd never give him the lead role in anything of this budget ever today. It would never happen.
Yeah.
Even not accounting for inflation. Like, if you say $70 million production budget and it's led by Paul Giamatti, you're getting an automatic no.
Yeah.
Like, not unless the co-lead is Tom Cruise. Hell no, no way. So
yeah. Wild to me. He does have this great line. It's just like his delivery. And sure, Shyamalan wrote it because it's a very Shyamalan thing to write, but somebody asks him like what he's been doing or what he's been up to or something like that, and he just goes, it's a apartment business. And that got an audible laugh from me when I was watching it. Do you have another good you want to share with the class?
Yes, sir. I love the tone of this. I love this movie in terms of tone and structure. He mentioned E.T., and I always say this, but this is always true with Shyamalan. He's a very post-Hitchcock, post-Spielberg director. Mm-hmm. And this movie is very Spielbergian in nature. It's very much like what if Spielberg did a fairy tale is kind of what he's going for.
Yeah.
And I love the ambition of that.
Yeah, I agree. I really like all the fantastical elements of this movie. Mm-hmm. I like the creatures. I like the idea of the creatures inhabiting our world and us just being too about our daily lives to notice that. There is something very poetic about pieces of this movie, I would say. And the fantastical elements plus the score of this movie very much do feel like a fairy tale in the best sense. Mm-hmm. I think there are other elements that may hurt that, and we'll discuss that in a little bit, but those elements that you're referencing specifically, I agree with. I like that whether this film works for you or not, I can't fault the desire to tell this kind of story. Mm-hmm. And in terms of the creatures, the wolf, the scrunt, I think it's called, that thing is really cool and really creepy. I like it a lot as a villainous creature. And there's a scene a shot rather at the end of the movie, and there are several shots of the wolf throughout the film that are creepy and well done, but there's one where the wolf's face appears in the reflection of a dryer door, and just the way it played out, I didn't notice it until it was there, basically. Like, my brain registered the red eye, but I didn't see the rest of it until it was just already there, and it got a like it didn't make me jump. It just kind of like put this smile on my face of like, oh, that's creepy.
Mhm.
That's that was just a really good reveal, and I liked that a lot. I would like it if more horror movies could do stuff like that.
Mhm.
Actually, believe it or not, the monkey which we were discussing, the film The Monkey, which we were discussing a little while ago, has a very similar sort of setup and
Oh,
payoff,
interesting. Okay.
which is the one probably creepy, actually scary moment in that otherwise very outlandish, over the top horror movie. But I digress. Did you have any thoughts on the Scrunt, the villainous wolf, or any of the other creatures in this movie? Any positives in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, I think they work. I think those things work as. I mean, they're a device. They're there to give us something to be afraid of. They're there to give us threat. They're there to give us something to overcome.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they work in that regard. I wouldn't say I have any strong feelings about them. I think that they look fine. I think that they're pretty scary. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I do. I mean, I think that they are a pretty generic plot element, in the way that those things can be.
Sure.
Just like you need something dangerous. You need a reason why story can't just go home. You need a reason for them to be concerned. You need a reason for them to work together. So you put these monsters in the grass. I would say I'm as big a fan as anybody of just adding some scary monsters to your movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Any other goods you want to discuss?
Yeah, I mean, I think this movie's beautifully shot. I think that as all M. Night Shyamalan movies, it's well, like the actual direction is strong. I think that you mentioned earlier that there was a poetic nature to the movie. I think that this is a poetic film.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there is something special about the way this movie tells its fairy tale. I think that the scenes of a little boy trying to read cereal boxes so that he can find magical clues to send this fairy mermaid woman home is very cool. We don't see things like that where you see Jeffrey Wright trying to read a crossword puzzle to send a mermaid back home. That sort of magic in the mundane that you get in this movie, we don't really see that at all. That's not a thing. Like, people don't do that. It's a little bit of a thing in like contemporary like literature and like what do they call it, like contemporary fantasy or whatever the hell. I don't read a lot of that or anything, but that's you don't find that very often. And I love that sort of juxtaposition of like the mundane regular lives we all have, but there is something magic happening in that moment. And I think the movie captures those things. Like, I think the movie gives you that. I think that there's that character who is seemingly like an ex-war veteran who is obsessed with history and war and always has his door open watching war documentaries.
Yeah.
And there's a scene where they're trying to heal Story, and he's saying, "You guys were being crazy. We need to take her to a hospital."
Yeah.
And the younger of the two Choi ladies is like, "No, like, some stories, we need to believe in some stories. Like, some stories are true." and they realize that like Paul Giamatti is actually the healer. I think that whole scene does what it's supposed to do, and I think it does it very effectively. And I think that for me personally, I don't see many movies that do this. Like, I don't get a lot of movies that actually make me. What character in this movie said I wanted to feel like a child again? Was that the war guy? I think it was. I wanted to believe. I wanted to feel like a child again.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of movies that give me that sort of childlike feeling that a movie like E.T. gives me.
Yeah.
And while I'm not saying this movie's fucking E.T., it goes there in a way that to me is quite rare. And I wish more things did. So I do think a lot of the things like that in this movie really work. I think that you nailed it when you said that there's a poetic nature to it. Yeah.
Yeah. I will say, in regards to the scene you were just discussing, when Cleveland brings Story back to life, that scene where he breaks down and is talking to his, now since past wife and children. Yeah, man. Like, as a father, as a husband, that scene got me. I cried. Cause that's just like, if you're not going to kill yourself after something like that, which I feel is a very fair and understandable way to handle the loss of your entire family. If you decide that you're gonna fight, you're gonna live on, the lengths you would go to be able to process that, you would bottle everything up. You wouldn't let it out. And what I like about his character, what I like about this movie is that, again, whether or not it is completely successful in what it's trying to say, whether it's too on the nose, this, that, or the other, it's a movie about redemption. It's a movie about finding the good in ourselves. What you were saying, finding magic in the mundane, that we can all have a purpose. And that message is a great message to have. And the fact that this character who essentially didn't think he had anything to live for was able to be given a purpose is, going back to that poetry, that at the end of the day, the message of the movie is that we all can have a purpose if we choose to see it that way. And I liked that a lot. I thought that was a great scene, and not something that we get in a lot of movies, period, and certainly not a lot of M. Night Shyamalan movies. There's unfortunately for him, he's typically pigeonholed into some sort of twist, some sort of revelation, and we don't get that here. We just get for all intents and purposes, a profession of love, from one character just saying how much he misses his family, and that is the climax right there. And to just kind of bring her home, I really like that cover of the Bob Dylan song that runs over the credits. I actually looked it up on my phone right afterwards because I thought it was such a good song. So a good version of that song, rather. But yeah. Anyways, that's what I got from my goods. Unless you got anything else that you want to double down on or contribute.
I think that's a pretty good spot for that right now. There's going to be more to say about the movie as we go, but I think we're going to have to get into the bad before we can formulate all of our thoughts.
Indeed. Well, without any further ado, let's step in some shit. Here at The Shit, we discuss, surprise, surprise, the things we didn't like about the movie. So, I'll start us off here. There are some shots in this movie that I find bothersome. I've seen it more in early Shyamalan than current Shyamalan. He would get a little too creative with some of his shots. Just to the point where it kind of took me out of it. Sometimes they're cool. I'll look at it and go, "Oh, I like what he's doing there." It's still kind of taking me out of the movie because I noticed the shot. But there are nothing specifically comes to mind with what he's doing with the camera, but there were several times, and I don't know if it's because they didn't have coverage or what, but there would be several times where there'd be a shot on someone, maybe from like a lower angle or from behind, thinking specifically of times where like Paul Giamatti's talking to people, and it'll be like on his leg from behind him, and we kind of see the person in the foreground and we hear his voice and he's talking about stuff, and we see the other person over here and they're talking and they're having a back and forth conversation, but we never cut to Paul Giamatti. We just kind of linger on this shot. And then there's another shot where he's talking to Story, and it's toward the end of the movie, and you would think traditionally, in order to be able to create this intimacy, you tend to maybe start the scene further away and then move in and do crosscuts between close-ups of the characters, and instead it's this, I don't know, 30 to 60 second discussion between the two of them, and it's just over Paul Giamatti's shoulder, and we never see his face. And again, this could all just be experimental choice, this, that, or the other. It just didn't work for me personally. I found it to pull me out of the movie a little bit. And again, this is not something that I'm going to be like, and that's the reason why this movie gets a D- from me. It's not that at all. It's just it's definitely like a nitpicky thing coming from someone who's a little bit OCD about these type of things. So, what about you? What's something that you don't like about Lady in the Water?
Well, there are some things I kind of don't want to step on your toes here. I kind of want to let you. It feels like you have some pretty well articulated thoughts that you have here.
Sure.
And I kind of wonder if you want me to more sort of bounce off of you and go about it that way, because it felt like you had some things you really wanted to say specifically.
Yeah. I'll kind of go through my list and you can jump in, and if I miss anything, feel free to go through. But yeah, I was able to more so than usual, I feel like, kind of get down to brass tacks with how I felt about some of this stuff. I will say, just in keeping with some of Shyamalan's faults in all of his films, there are some vaguely offensive stereotypes in this movie. I'm thinking specifically about the Korean mother and daughter, which is it's not terrible, and
Right.
obviously a lot of it's being used to comedic effect. But like, I think like the 1-2 punch for me was that there were some just certain things that felt stereotypical. And again, this is 2006, so I feel like we have gotten better with
20 years later, yeah.
representation 20 years since then. But then, like, when I saw the documentary, and then the gal who plays the daughter, she just has a very like American accent. I'm like, oh, why didn't we just Why didn't we just use that? But again, I think also, if I remember correctly, Shyamalan said that these characters, I don't think we hear this in the story at all, but he said that they were the newest people to the Cove. So perhaps they were, newly immigrants. But that was just like a slightly thing, and it stuck out to me more just because of how Shyamalan has done certain representation in his other films, particularly in regards to people with mental handicaps and stuff that we have discussed in the past.
Absolutely. I think that's an interesting one. I just want to retort on that one a little bit. I think that's an interesting one because I think that there's a fine line between good representation and you have to be able to use any person humorously, right? Yeah. Like no one is exempt from humor. No group should be exempt from humor.
Yes.
But you don't want to punch down at people.
Yeah.
Because that's just lame. So I think that that's actually a really interesting topic and a really interesting fine line. Recently, my girlfriend was listening to a podcast where some guys mentioned they were fans of M. Night Shyamalan, two young black men. They were fans of M. Night Shyamalan, but they really hated Mid-Sized Sedan in his movie Old. Did you see Old?
No, I have not seen Old yet. So
okay. So there's an actor named Aaron Pierre who you may have seen in the most recent Netflix film. It's from the guy who did Green Room. Shoot, what's it called? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. It's really good.
Rebel Ridge.
Rebel Ridge, yeah. Rebel Ridge, right? Great. I think we discussed it actually on our last podcast. Yeah, Rebel Ridge is fantastic.
It's good. So Aaron Pierre is in that movie, and I won't spoil anything for anybody, but he plays a rapper named Mid-Sized Sedan, and they were saying like that was very racist. Like they didn't like that. They still like M. Night Shyamalan, they still like his movies, but they thought that was racist. And I thought that was really interesting because I feel like that one was right on the line of like, is it racist or is it just being humorous about people and not like leaving certain people out of the humor? And I feel you could make a similar discussion about the mother-daughter in this movie where it's like, is it just being humorous or is it kind of an insensitive representation? And I think it's interesting what you said because I think you nailed it. I think that the simple answer would have been just let the daughter be from here. Let her have an American accent. Let her be a normal American girl with the immigrant mother and then show sort of what the immigrant family experience is really like in that way, right? Like I feel like that would have been an easy way to make it less problematic.
There is another Netflix thing, and the name escapes me, but my wife watched it. This great comedy series about, I do believe it was also a Korean family running this little shop in, I think it's Canada. And
Simu Liu came out of that show. Kim's Convenience.
Yeah, there you go. Kim's Convenience. Great show. Does what I feel like M. Night is trying to do in this movie, where it's humorous, but in a way that feels very natural to the culture and the dynamic of the family coming from two different worlds, basically, and in a way that feels very appreciative and still having fun with stuff, but not making fun, which can be a very fine line to walk. And again, maybe we're going too deep on this, but
we probably are. For what it's worth, I think in an intentional way, I think he was trying to do that.
Yeah,
I do think. I don't think he was trying to be like, "Ha ha! Look at how stupid Asian people are." I don't.
No, I would never like. I don't. Yeah. From everything that I've seen this, and obviously I don't know M. Night Shyamalan personally.
Right.
If I did, I would very much request to be in one of his movies. But no, I don't think he has he doesn't strike me as a person who has a malevolent bone in his body, except maybe towards movie critics, which we'll get to in a little bit.
Sure.
But, you know, there are certain things that you just, as a writer and a creative, that if it's outside your wheelhouse, particularly other people's cultures and other people's way of life, that's when, if you must have these characters in that fashion in your story, then you do what John Carpenter did with Deborah Hill on Halloween. You get somebody who knows that culture, who knows how those people talk and act and why they're that way, and you talk to them about it and you get their opinion on it. So, anyways, a tangent, ladies and gentlemen.
No, I think it's a good topic.
I had written down that because with all the times that Cleveland goes back to the mother and daughter for the details of this story, as it progressed, I was like, man, this is an insanely detailed bedtime story. And the fact that like that just these nuggets continue to just, you know, be talked about, and there's just more and more detail. I'm like this is like a 70-year-old woman going off of what her mother told her when she was a child, and she still remembers like all of these. It's a moment of suspension of disbelief being stretched to its limit for me.
It feels pretty nitpicky in a movie about magical water ladies, but sure.
Yeah, you know, well, it will tie into my bigger beefs at the tail end here. There is the scene where Cleveland goes into the pool, and then into the pool inside of the pool, and then gets stuck in the pool inside of the pool. And I don't even think Tom Cruise can hold his breath for that long. But again, it's, you know.
Hey, maybe he played water polo in college.
It's true. Perhaps. He is a doctor, so I could see him, you know, going to an Ivy League and, you know, slapping dicks underneath the water for sure. The acting like a child scene is very weird to me and went on for too long. I didn't even realize what was happening in that scene, and then it clicked from earlier on when I remembered the daughter telling him that he needed to act like a child in front of the mother in order for her to accept telling him more of the story, which I think is a very odd way to go about gaining somebody's trust.
That scene was super weird.
Yeah, I don't know. Like the milk on the mustache and then him like leaning over.
So here's the thing. The only reason I'm going to say I'm a little bit mixed on this one is because it's fucking funny. I laughed out loud during that scene when I saw it in theaters 20 years ago, and I laughed out loud when I watched it a couple days ago. So like, as a gag, does it totally work within the flow of the movie? Like it kind of doesn't. But like, also, did it make me laugh? Like, yeah, it did. So it's hard to say that the movie would be objectively better without. I mean, yeah, Paul Giamatti, man, he lands that so. I mean, ugh.
Well, Paul Giamatti he does.
He sells it.
Again, for that man, I have no notes.
Yep. I'm sorry, that scene is just so bonkers.
Yeah, no, it's just
child. So he's like, okay, I'm not gonna wipe my mustache and I'm gonna lay down like a weirdo. Like, what the fuck?
And as somebody who's had a mustache and like had milk in your mustache, like I'm immediately like, ugh.
Yeah.
Like, the longer that stays in there, the more it's gonna smell, bud.
Yeah.
Gross. And I mean, again, if you ever just want to jump in, because now I just feel like I'm just like, you know,
Well, no, the thing is that like I think a lot of your negatives are going to be much more mixed for me.
Yeah.
Like, I think a lot of the things that you might hate, I'm more ambivalent towards, or I like something about it, but I hate something about it. Kind of like what you just described with that scene. Like, I agree with you that scene, I wouldn't have written that into the script. I would have cut it from the movie. But I also can't deny that in retrospect, it's one of the funniest scenes in the movie also. So, like, it's more mixed for me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
So I want to hear where you're at on it, and we can kind of talk about it.
What about the death of the movie critic?
Pretty bad scene.
Yeah, I hated it.
Pretty bad scene.
Like, oh, come on, man. Like, it would have worked for me so much better had he just died and not did the whole thing. It still would have been so on the nose.
Right.
But it still would have been better than that whole, I mean, for all intents and purposes, the man is breaking the fucking fourth wall there.
Yeah. Yeah, he is.
And yeah, I don't know, like, the threat would have felt more real had somebody else, like, been attacked by the dog too, or been killed by the dog, I think. I think in terms of,
good point.
You know, that critical, like, you just don't care, and then you're just like, all right, cool, so this is a comical bit basically that's going on here, so it takes that threat away even more.
Yeah.
And I think had we lost, one of the other people in the cove, it would have kind of raised the stakes a little bit more. That makes sense, because never do we ever really think that Story is going to die and not make it back to.
Can I ask you a question?
World, Yeah.
Do they know that it got the movie critic and killed him?
I don't know if they know that. I don't remember seeing that.
I don't even think we get those stakes. Like, I don't even think they realize that, like, hey, it killed somebody.
Yeah.
I think you're hitting the nail on the head here. I think that should have been a scary and uncomfortable, like, that should have been a bad sequence. It should have been like, oh no, he's trapped with a monster and he gets killed, and it shouldn't have been played for laughs.
Yeah.
And they should have figured it out at some point and let that raise the stakes. I think it would have been okay to give a little bit more of that to this movie. Not too much. I don't think they should have killed more than 2 people, because this is a fairy tale, and I think on some level he did make this for the kids. Yeah,
absolutely.
But I do agree with you. I think that they played that scene wrong. I think that's a pretty bad scene, and I think that they instead of playing that for a laugh, they should have played it for, like, no, the stakes are real. These monsters will kill you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I have 2 big things, and this one in particular is probably this first one here in particular is probably what ruins the movie on a storytelling level for me. And that's the exposition dumps. I mean, my God, the amount of times that we have to go back and figure out what's going on, where the Korean mother explains to the Korean daughter explains to Cleveland, and Cleveland goes back and explains it to other people, and then Story's explaining stuff to Cleveland, and then we're playing a game of, well, Story can't really tell you what's going on for some reason, so we're just gonna pass things back and forth, and she's gonna do the baseball thing where she grabs her ear and hair and stuff like that. Again, if this had happened once or twice, that's understandable, but you get to a point where, particularly in a fantasy movie like this, where you're going, why are we telling? Why aren't we showing? Why can't this have gone into some sort of this is not the greatest thing. I would certainly like, from a master storyteller like Shyamalan, something better than necessarily a flashback, but off the top of my head, a flashback of, Story starts telling Cleveland what's going on, and then we just fade into a flashback so and there doesn't need to be any dialogue. There doesn't need to be voiceover. We can just see what this world is like and where she came from and what the threats are and stuff like this, and get a general idea. But instead, it's constantly back and forth. I would say a good 35% of this movie, if not more, is exposition dumps at various stages. I mean, it goes on until the end of the goddamn movie. We're still trying to figure out who is what and what their role is in this, and it's just all talking. And fuck me if it doesn't just by the halfway point, I was like, I cannot believe we are still talking about what this world is and what who's gonna do what, and how we're just fucking throw the broad back in the pool at this stage in the game. I do not care. So the floor is yours, sir.
I think that you have a point about there being a little bit too much going back and forth, a little bit too much sort of restating the same things. Like there's that could have been tightened up for sure. I think that there's definitely a way that you could have done that. And I agree. Like it's not M. Night Shyamalan's finest high level storytelling ability, compared to, when you think about the script for a movie like Unbreakable, but I kind of think you're disregarding the premise of the movie and the fundamental nature of this film. It's a talkie. It's a mystery. And in talkie mysteries, people talk their way through mysteries. And that's just part of what this movie is doing. I
don't think there's any mystery in it. We're told right from the gate what the objective is. The objective is to get her back to the blue world.
Yeah, but we don't know how. And so we're going on a journey where we're discovering how. We're learning, what is this world? Who is this girl? How do we get her back? What do we have to do? And it's you're right. We do have an objective, and in that sense, it's an adventure, right? And I guess maybe I could see the argument that like it's a weird sort of mishmash of storytelling styles, but I don't agree that it's fundamentally a bad people, that this is about people in places talking about things, because that's what most of his good movies are. It like, you look at a movie like The Sixth Sense, or well, no, that's not a great example. You look at a movie like Signs, right? And like a lot of people would have made that movie with a lot more action sequences, right? A lot more seeing the aliens, a lot more of that stuff. And Shyamalan does more, we're going to sort of exist in the atmosphere, and we're going to talk about what's going on, and we're going to be thinking about what's happening. And it's just more that style of storytelling.
Well, my argument for Signs is that it is that, but your characters are going through something where, particularly Mel Gibson's character, has to rediscover his faith, and he doesn't believe these are aliens. And at first the family doesn't believe, and they slowly, one by one, begin to believe, but he's the last holdout. Everyone in this fucking movie just agrees. We never see, except for that one brief moment where, at the end of the movie, where Story's dead, and then the Mr. Leeds kind of gives a little bit of a pushback, but I mean, that's the 20 seconds. Everyone else, we never see any pushback. We just have Cleveland going door to door, and then people come in and they just already believe that. No one's ever like, Cleveland, you're out of your goddamn mind. Take this girl to the police. She's lost her mind and she's taking you with her. We don't see any of that. Everyone just already believes, so there's no pushback. And again, I don't know, man. There's no drama to it. That's kind of the thing, is that mystery has drama to it. If you're gonna have a talkie like an Aaron Sorkin sort of like a courtroom style thing, there has to be drama to it. There has to be people giving and taking and pushing and pulling, and everyone just is so agreeable in this apartment complex that they're all just like, yeah, we're gonna get 100 people to our apartment complex and fuck whatever noise violations we're going to be having. Fuck all the other residents in this apartment complex who are not contributing to this story. We're going to, just have all these people here, and we're going to have this band here, and all these, like, there's so much just there's no red tape for any of this.
Mm-hmm.
So
you're getting to a point where you're giving me too much to bounce off of. So give me just a moment here. So shit, where do we start with this?
Well, okay, first before you we go tit for tat on this, do you not see any of this the way that I do? Is this something that where you're like, oh yeah, like, no, that's, you don't
I don't see it the way you see it. I think
I'm not saying like, hey, you have to see it my way, but you don't have any of these cues either, because I mean, again,
no, I've got some of them a little bit, but not at all to the degree that you have. I don't like. I think a lot of movies waste way too much time with everyone not believing what's obviously happening right in front of them, and I think that it can actually get really boring watching characters be like, too. This isn't real. It couldn't possibly be happening. And it's like, we just watched a ghost eat your dog, bro. Like, get over it. Like, you're in a movie. It's happening.
Yeah.
I like that we don't waste a ton of red tape making everyone believe. For most of these characters, there's not a lot of stakes as to whether or not they believe. So it would make sense why someone might just go along with this crazy situation. It's also a magical story. Maybe the Narf inspires belief in people. She certainly seems to bring magical things out of people. I think that there is, it's there's different ways of giving us drama, but I do think there is drama. Like I care about this Narf. I care about story. I care about her getting home, and I care about how she's going to do that. I care about the obstacles in her way, the things stopping her from getting home. I care about this guy who I don't quite know who he is or understand what he is, but he makes me care about him right away. And I care about whatever it is he's going through that I don't quite know about, because that's sprinkled throughout the movie as we find out, like, oh, you used to be a doctor, your wife and family were killed. We find that out a little later, but I care about that. And I care about this community. I care about how this community is coming together to solve a problem, because that's very much a lot of what this movie's about. And I think that it's interesting, because I am definitely one to nitpick movies. Like, don't get me wrong, but like, I don't think like them having a party in a courtyard in a movie about a magical girl who comes from the water people, like complaining that like, well, they had a party, so someone would call the police on them, feels like, that feels like a pretty oddly specific thing to choose to let it like affect your enjoyment of the movie, right?
Well, it's not like these are things that I sit back and I go, well, they even harped on it multiple times in the documentary, where it's like, you're basing a story in reality, and they constantly said, well, M. Night likes to make things real. He likes to deal with like real human drama and
magical reality, though. It's magical reality. It's bringing magic to reality.
For sure. But like, if you start your movie off in the real world, and these are real world characters, then regardless of whether or not you bring in fantastical elements, your real world characters still have to have real world consequences.
But
I agree that not every single scene do we need to have people butting up against heads, but I would very much have liked to have seen some pushback in some regard. It just seems it's all, I don't know. It goes back to what I was kind of saying with The Wolf, that there are no there was no point at which I thought in this movie, yeah, they're not going to achieve their goal. And, you know, whether or not you're going to say that, well, it's a fairy tale, of course, blah, blah, blah,
Which is
blah,
exactly
blah.
what I'm going to say. Yeah.
But that, again, if
this isn't a horror movie, this is a fairy tale.
I understand that, but there are plenty of fairy tales that you are still concerned about your characters. Hansel and Gretel, Little Red Riding Hood. Like, there are great examples of putting your characters in peril and making it actually distressful. And I just don't get that. Like, even with the wolf, like, they go inside. Like, the wolf manages to get inside the building later on in the movie, but the wolf never tries to penetrate and get inside when he knows Story's in there. So I just never feel any drama. I never feel any stakes in this movie.
Well,
Everyone goes along for the ride, you know?
And I think that's a valid criticism. Like, I think that's fair. I totally think it's fair. What I'm saying is, like, I think when you're talking about, like, okay, well, we're setting a realistic tone, right? A realistic movie. I think that when you need something to be convenient for your plot, like, if something is realistic, it should be allowed to be a plot convenience. So, like, a superintendent in a apartment complex saying we're going to throw a party tonight in the courtyard and not having the police called on him is by far not the craziest thing I've ever heard of, right?
No, by no means.
So those kinds of criticisms just feel a little bit like out of left field to me.
Well, if it was just that one thing, it'd be fine. If it was just the one, you know, or two characters that didn't give any pushback, that'd be fine. But when you add on top these things, then I start to notice it. When it's just so convenient that, you know, everyone goes along with it. When it's just so, and again, a lot of this
part of the movie is that, though. Like, I think a big part of what this movie is doing is telling a story of a community working together in spite of their differences.
But I don't like what differences. None of them fight. They're all best pals. That's just what I'm getting at. It's not one thing. It's not two things. It's just these tiny little things that it's the straw that breaks the camel's back. That's all it is for me. It's a bunch of little problems that all add up to, like, okay, well, of course. Why wouldn't it be this way? You haven't given me any reason you never gave me any reason to think that it wasn't going to be that way. And whether or not it's a fairy tale, you still want to keep your audience engaged. If you don't have the desire to make things difficult for your lead character,
I mean, they're pretty difficult.
Like,
we thought Story was going to die there for a while.
Huh?
I mean, Story was dying for a little while. I wouldn't say things weren't difficult. But yeah, it wasn't enough conflict for you. It wasn't enough pushback. It wasn't enough conflict.
Yeah.
It wasn't enough drama.
That's kind of what I'm getting at. So
yeah, I think it's fair.
But my other big and last thing here, and I have this all written out. So I have here, this may be Shyamalan at his most vainglorious, given how personal the material is, and for lack of a better expression, how up his own ass he is with this bedtime story. You can see just how much he is patting himself on the back throughout the course of this feature. It reminds me very much of how when George Lucas went back to do episodes 1 through 3 and didn't have Lawrence Kasdan there to reel him in. M. Night feels like in Lady, M. Night in Lady feels like he didn't have anyone to reel him in. That plus the 1-2 punch of giving himself the most prominent role he's ever had in one of his own films and making that role someone of potential great importance to the future of humanity comes across as so pompous and borderline arrogant that it damn near sinks the whole goddamn ship that I would argue at its base is a creatively designed vessel. Your thoughts?
I agree with you. It does feel like episodes 1 through 3. It does feel like George Lucas without Lawrence Kasdan to reel him in. I think that's what I was talking about earlier at the beginning when we were talking about how he rewrote it 13 times and was told, don't make this movie. It's not there. This was the movie he was told, don't do it. And he did it. And so, yeah, man, I think that's totally fair. I think that's totally accurate. I don't land on the side that he shouldn't have made this movie. I land on the side that he should have made this movie. I like this movie, and I think this movie is unique. I think that this movie is I think this movie is special. Now, I don't mean great. I do not mean great. But I do think it's special in the way that it tells a story in a different way, in a way that other people don't. People don't have the balls to tell these kinds of stories. People don't have the creative freedom to tell these kinds of stories. I guess the balls really comes down more to like executives than it does creatives, but you get my point. And I think that I love that this movie is totally playing in its own key. It's totally offbeat. It's a totally different thing. It's not meeting any of the expectations of the audience or anybody else. And I think that that's a very good thing. I think that's I think that's something that should be commended. But yeah, I also agree that like this was a movie where he needed notes. He needed an editor to be like, this doesn't work. This doesn't work so well. That doesn't work so well. Even like talking about putting him in that role, like, let me tell you, man, I don't see that as that big of a deal. Like, I see other people really reacting strongly to that, just like you. Like, I think you are in the majority on that one, that like people don't like that. I don't care, but I wish someone had told him not to, because people obviously really care. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I mean this is, I'm with you. Like, I'm glad he made this movie. Like, I don't sit here and think, Knight, you fucked up, man. This
This isn't The Happening.
No. The 1-2 punch of this plus The Happening did some serious irrevocable damage to his career, I think. But I'll tell a brief story about a friend of ours, and I won't name this friend, but this friend did a piece of art, for lack of a better word. I'm not going to specify what type of art, and kind of did this kind of a GoFundMe thing. Like, you can contribute and get a piece of this work that he had done. And I had been very supportive of this friend, and am still very supportive of this friend and his endeavors. But I knew right away that the work that he had put out had not been something that he had let anybody else work on, tweak, tool, mess with, edit, look over. And to me, that was a unforgivable error, because he wasn't going to listen to what anybody else said. And he didn't want to have his feelings hurt, which is integral to creating art. Whether or not you necessarily agree with what other people say, you still need to hear it. And sometimes, a lot of times, when people contribute stuff, and this is coming from someone who's created and been stubborn with it, but also learned that things can get better because of this. And I think that this is with M. Night Shyamalan in this one. What you said very much, and what I said is that, yeah, he needed someone, a confidant, someone who he trusted and who saw his vision, his overall vision, that could be like, yeah, Knight, I see what you're doing here, but this, and this, they do not work this way. You need to retool it, and otherwise, it's not gonna flow the way you want it to.
Mhm.
And I like M. Night Shyamalan in a lot of his cameos. I think they're perfectly tasteful and fine.
Mhm.
This one, I think it's also with the whole film critic thing being punished as the only person to die in this, and obviously, him with all of his issues with people giving him a hard time about his movies and stuff like that. You can't disconnect those two things. So when you put the critic in that position, and then he gives himself the role of the guy whose work will one day, it just feels very vain to me in a way that I'm just like, man, maybe if you had covered it up a little bit better, it wouldn't be so out there, but it just looks like exactly what it is to me. And
It does. Okay, interesting. I didn't see that. I don't think M. Night was saying that I'm some special Jesus person and my work is going to change the world. I don't think he meant that at all. I
no,
think
I
he
don't.
just
Again,
thought he
I
fit that
don't. I
character.
Everything I see from this guy, I don't think of him as this pompous ass that would put that out there. But it's still like, bro, had you like asked anyone, what do you think this looks like? Do you think this looks bad? Like, you have to know your characters, you have to know
And
your story.
that's where I agree with you. Is I agree that he should have maybe considered that people would see it that way, but I don't think he meant that at all. Like when you see him talk about making movies, he's a pretty humble guy. Like
No, I know.
he'll outright say like I've made multiple movies that suck. Like he says that. Like
He even says that about his character and himself in the documentary. He says, yeah, like the guy is pretty humble, like just down to earth, normal, unassuming guy. And he's like that. I'm kind of like that myself.
mhm.
Um, so like again, like I don't think he was coming at it from this, but like I said, it maybe if you take the role of the critic out of this movie, that is just so blatantly obvious what he's doing there,
Mhm.
and he wants it to be obvious. He's not trying
Mhm.
to hide what he's doing there.
Mhm.
It's just like, okay, yeah, the person who critiques me gets killed, and my work will. It just that's you just can't. I can't not see it that way. And again,
Sure.
I don't think I. But
Can you blame him coming off of Unbreakable and The Village that he wanted to kill a movie critic? Because I can't.
no, and signs too. I mean,
And
like,
Signs. I would look at any pompous prick who never created art in his entire life who trashed those movies exactly the way I look at that pompous prick in that movie.
yeah,
So I do think there's a little bit of credibility there. And I also don't think that he's saying, and again, this is hitting me this way, and maybe it's hitting people a different way. And I totally respect that. I don't think he's saying every critic who doesn't like my work is a piece of shit. I don't think he's saying that.
no,
I think he's saying there are just some critics who have rubbed me the wrong way, and they're kind of like this, and I'm going to make fun of them.
yeah,
And I actually think it's kind of crazy that film critics, when this movie came out, thought that they were above being lampooned. Like directors lampoon directors, they lampoon actors, they lampoon writers, they lampoon producers and executives, but they can't make fun of you. Like they can't put you in a movie and make fun of you and your stereotypical behaviors. Like I think that's crazy. I think you absolutely can do that. I personally, if I'm going back in time and I'm doing this movie with them and I'm giving him advice from the future, I'm not even telling him to pull the critic character. I'm just telling him to do it a little better.
yeah. I
That's
mean,
just me, though.
no, I mean, you and I mean, guess what we're doing here? I wouldn't say I would never go as far to say, like, even with my reviews and stuff like that, I really, we've talked about this at length before on this podcast, but that I feel like we always try and come at it from an approach of, yeah, like we know movie making is hard and that people don't always get it right,
Right.
and that never in a million years would we sit back and, click our tongues at these people.
Yeah. We're not talking down to you, filmmakers.
No.
We are not.
No, by no means. But I think so much of, when we do have things that we don't like about the movie, and I mean, obviously it's been very apparent even in this discussion that it comes from a much more personal preference for storytelling. I mean, every now and then there's stuff in the movie that is just bad, stuff that doesn't age well, stuff that just wasn't good to begin with. But hindsight is 2020. So, and with that, I think we shall move on to our next section, truly terrifying tidbits. Kalen, I'm not even gonna bother asking you this question because you already said it like 2 or 3 times in the last section. This is not a horror movie, it's a fairy tale movie. That being said, it is rated PG-13 for some scary sequences. What is the scariest scene in the movie to you?
Maybe like the what are they called? What are the wolves called, bro?
Scrunts?
Maybe the scrunch in the rain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna reiterate my scene that I talked about earlier, where you see the face, the reflection, in the dryer door. I thought that was pretty creepy. So, well, that was a fun little pit stop. On to the rewatch. Here at the rewatch, we discuss the film's rewatchability, some of our favorite moments, and rate its overall entertainment value. So, Kalen, if you were going to try and get someone to, watch this movie that had never seen this movie, but you're trying to pitch it to them, what is the YouTube clip that you would show them?
Probably one of the scenes where Bryce Dallas Howard isn't wearing a lot of clothes. I'm sorry, guys. We just keep going low today. We're not normally like that.
No, but I mean, she is like naked in the whole movie.
She's naked throughout the movie, and it's kind of an elephant in the room. Like, why doesn't that girl ever put on regular clothes?
Yeah, just like pants. Like,
yeah,
no one ever thought to give her pants.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have written here, this flick is so goddamn dense that it's hard to pick a scene that would actually speak to anyone who had no idea what the fuck was going on. I really was like thinking, I was like, there's no point in this movie where I could be like, all right, here's a clip. You get it? You're reeled in, aren't you? Like, no, man, there's too much exposition going on. The scene that I was like, okay, that has to be it, is the scene where Story saves Cleveland from the pool, and then she grabs the thing, he sees her, he falls into the pool, or hits his head, falls in the pool, and then she rescues him, and then we see, and we're going back to it, we see her naked legs, and then you cut. That's what I have.
I think that's a great choice. I wouldn't have come up with a choice that good. I would have said something stupid like the scene where he's trying to be childlike in front of like, hey, you want to watch this movie where he's laying down all weird?
Oh man. And if you had to pick a favorite scene,
Paul Giamatti's his monologue to Story, to his family. That's my favorite.
Yeah, that's what I have here. I have
that whole scene is I love that whole scene quite a bit.
That's a beautiful scene. That was mine as well. That was just a well crafted, well acted scene. And we've been ranking M. Night's cameos. I think this is much more than a cameo. He's a
this isn't a cameo. He's got a part in this movie.
Supporting actor in this film. I like the introduction with him and his sister quite a bit. Like,
I loved it.
him like throwing the laundry and everything. I kind of laughed at it. I mean, if in all fairness, the role, the character himself and his performance of it, it's great. It's great. Like I have no notes as far as that is concerned.
I feel better that you say that because I was feeling a little bit weird. Like I was the only person who thinks he's good in this movie.
No, he's M. Night Shyamalan is a fine actor.
Yeah, he's a serviceable actor.
He's got pathos. I think probably my favorite of his is the stuff in Signs. I think he's really good in Signs.
Really good in that movie.
And I think he's good here. My issues with his role in this film have nothing to do with his acting in the movie. So, I mean, I don't really know how to rate this, like, out of 10, because if we're taking into consideration, you know, maybe giving yourself a role that's a little bit too big but then, you know, what are we talking about? You know, Mel Gibson directed himself in Braveheart, so like, you know, it's hard to say, but I'll probably just give it a 5 out of 10 since I'm, you know, I think the acting is good and his performance is good and everything, but I'm mixed on whether or not he should have done that specific role. So I'll give it a 5 out of 10. What about you?
I like it. I think it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And out of 10, what would you rank it?
Hard to give it an out of 10. Like I guess 7. Like I don't know. I think he's good in it. I don't, like I said, we've already talked about this, but I don't have the same emotional reaction to M. Night plays an important person in the movie and he lambasts a critic. Like those things didn't.
Yeah.
I don't know. They didn't hurt my feelings as much as they did the general audience. So I just look at the performance in a nutshell. I look at it, you know, in a vacuum, and I think it's good.
All right. And if we were going to rank the rewatch value of Lady in the Water from a scale of insanely rewatchable, yearly rewatch, a good time at the movies, take it or leave it, or one and done, what would you give it?
A good time at the movies.
Good time at the movies?
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna give it a take it or leave it. I won't go as far to say like a one and done because if like I was gonna come over to your house and you were like, "Hey Johnny, I want to watch Lady in the Water," I wouldn't be like, "No, never." Mm-hmm. But I do not see myself going out of my way to rewatch this film anytime soon.
I don't see myself going out of my way to rewatch this film anytime soon, but I would be surprised if I don't come back around to it at some point.
You think you're going to watch it again before you die?
Yes.
Okay. I do not.
Okay.
But
there you go.
I leave room open. I leave the door open to be proven wrong. That's all I'm saying. If it was one and done, I'd be like, nah, dog, we're not doing that again.
Yeah, for sure. And there's movies I feel that way about. Like I'm not, you know, I'm never watching The Happening again.
Oh man, no, man. The last go, I could barely get through that movie, man.
Yep.
Fuck, that was rough. Oh, all right. We're not talking about that anymore. We did like 2.5 hours on that shit. It's terrible. All right. On to the Jony Horror score. All right. So we are briefly going to discuss the response to the film before we give our final thoughts and rankings. All right. So this will be taken from Wikipedia, ladies and gentlemen. So thank you to all those who contributed. Reception. In its opening weekend, July 21st through the 23rd, 2006, the year of our Lord, the film grossed a total of $18.2 million, placing third in the US behind Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest, and Monster House. Yeah, man, everyone was going to see Dead Man's Chest that weekend. That's what I went and saw.
I went and saw this.
You would, you nerd.
Yeah, I am nerd.
It was Shyamalan's lowest opening for any of his 5 major films. As a result of negative reviews and poor word of mouth, its second week fell sharply to 7.1 million, pushing its total to only 32.2 million. In its third weekend was no better, falling another 62.1% to 2.7 million. As of 2011, its total was 42 million and change. In addition, the film made only 30.5 million in other territories, bringing its tally to approximately $72 million internationally. Critical reaction. Lady in the Water received mostly negative reviews around the time of its release. On the review aggregation website Rotten Tomatoes, the film has an approval rating of 25% based on 212 reviews, with an average rating of 4.30 out of 10. The critical consensus reads, a far-fetched story with little suspense and unconvincing scenarios. Lady in the Water feels contrived, pretentious, and rather silly. Brian Lowry of Variety magazine wrote a scathing advance review that appeared on July 16th, 2006. Common complaints about the films were that little effort was put into getting the viewer to believe in the world, that few moments of the film could have been taken seriously, and that Shyamalan was using the film as a form of self-indulgence. Instead of having a minor cameo, as in most of his films, Shyamalan casts himself as a visionary whose writing changes the world, and another character included a film critic portrayed by Bob Balaban as an arrogant, self-assured, and passive who comes to a violent end. Many reviewers attacked this perceived self-indulgence. The New York Times wrote of the story, apparently those who live in the water now roam the earth trying to make us listen, though initially it's rather foggy as to what precisely we're supposed to hear. The crash of waves, the songs of sirens, the voice of God, until we realize, of course, we're meant to cup up our ear to an even higher power, Mr. Shyamalan. Of Shyamalan's role in the film, Mark Kermode, said, it's rather like someone pouring petrol over their heads and setting themselves on fire.
These critics are in their feelings, bro.
Yeah, I should have said at the start of this episode that the very first time I watched this movie was last night, and I did not read any of these reviews or know that I necessarily shared all of these same thoughts with these people until just about now. But I guess I feel a little bit better knowing that I'm not alone in my thoughts as to this stuff. But at the same time, it, anybody who feels attacked in an argument, particularly when you're attacked for your job or your what could be your whole identity, you're going to get defensive. And I mean, Shyamalan was probably just asking to get poor reviews by putting that critic getting mauled to death. He wasn't going to win a lot of people over in that regard.
If you're a real film critic actually doing your job, though, you put that aside and you judge the movie objectively. Just
absolutely. I do recall going through some of the stuff and M. Night saying that the film did receive one of his highest cinema scores from audiences. So there is definitely a divide there that you can see, pissing off critics, but audiences probably not caring nearly as much about that sort of stuff. Yeah, there's just more mean-spirited stuff here that we don't necessarily need to go into right now. But all that said, the film was not well received at the time of its release. But we're not talking about 2006. We're talking about 2025, ladies and gentlemen. And I am going to go ahead and run with the negative stuff, and then Kalen, I'm gonna let you finish her off with a little bit more positivity. How about that? Okay.
Sounds good.
So what I have written here is it's the type of movie where you find yourself thinking, who is this for? I really enjoyed the vibe of the movie and its one location setting. It has a beautiful score, and Paul Giamatti is physically incapable of delivering a bad performance. But at the end of the day, this feels like a vanity project from M. Night. From everything from its inception to his role in the picture, to the fact that he was so artistically offended by the heads at Disney that he greenlit a companion piece detailing the events surrounding the making of this film. I'm referring, of course, to the book that he had written about that was referenced earlier in the podcast. This film really just leaves a bad taste in my mouth and stands as a stark example of what happens when you let your own opinion of yourself blow out of proportion. 5 out of 10.
What do you mean by vanity project? How would you define that?
I think that it's hard to really put into words more than what I've said.
Okay.
That's okay. But yeah, like what I just listed there, it's not. I think it's great that he took a bedtime story from something that he told his kids and turn it into a movie. I think that's rad. I think it's really fucking rad. But it just shows you that it comes from a very personal spot. And when something's so personal, it goes to back what we were talking about, where you don't want anyone else to tamper with it. It's your baby, And I do think, regardless of whether or not he was conscious of what he was doing, putting himself in that specific role, that it comes across as I mean, again, it's the words, it says it in the movie, the words that he will write will inspire humanity to better itself. Like, that's just,
it's actually, it will inspire one boy who will better the world.
Yeah.
But yeah, it creates a chain of events that makes the world better.
Yeah.
Which, is something that these stories kind of do. Like the next greatest filmmaker of all time might be inspired by
yeah, and I mean that's
something.
that's kind of what I'm talking about, is that
I don't think he's talking about what makes him special. I think he's talking about what makes stories special or what makes like
sure,
people
but
special.
again, don't put yourself in that position because you're asking for people to
make
come at you.
assumptions. So
Yeah.
here's the thing. Here's my take on that. I don't think, hey, M. Night Shyamalan played a character who's important. I don't think that's a valid criticism. I think that's an invalid criticism. I think that's people being in their feelings and using their imagination to create something to be upset about rather than judging the film for what it is.
Well, I
Critically
mean,
speaking.
that could be the case for the critics, but then this is just me. All this that I wrote again was before I read any of that stuff on Wikipedia. So
And
this
as a
is-
fan, you're allowed to feel that way. But what I'm saying is, I just don't think that that's. I think that you're complaining about something that's not in the text. You're
I
complaining about
can't.
something that you're
But
assuming
also,
about the
like
text.
again, I can't convince you
Mhm.
that what I feel is right because it's what I feel. So what
So you're saying
this
this is a visceral reaction.
It's
It's an
yes,
emotional
I'm
reaction.
like, yeah, like I watched it and was like, what the fuck, bro?
Okay.
Why would you do that?
So what I'm saying is, obviously that's totally fair. Like that's your emotional, visceral, your natural response is to feel that way. Totally fair. What I'm saying is, I don't believe that that was the intention behind it. And I don't believe that the movie suggests that was the intention behind it. I believe that that is people coming to their own sort of conclusion. And if that's how it makes you feel, that's how it makes you feel. But I don't think it's really present in the movie. It makes me think of other situations where I feel like people get emotionally involved, they get upset, they don't like somebody for whatever, and then that cascades over whatever else they do. So,
Well, sure, but I think that I've made it clear that this has not clouded my perception of M. Night Shyamalan as a person or
I
a
do think
filmmaker.
I
But
don't, and I don't think it did. And this isn't me coming after you. This is me just talking about how the world received the movie.
Sure.
Um,
I'm just trying to give you my final thoughts on this film and
yeah.
how I feel. I'm
Mm.
also very much gonna allow you to
Sorry.
speak your final thoughts.
I will let you finish, my friend.
No,
I was curious when you said Vanity Project. I wanted to kind of have a back and forth on that.
No, and that's fair. Again, it can be, we can make arguments for what a vanity project is.
Mm-hmm.
You can see a good version of that in, a complicated version of that in Braveheart, But again, Mel Gibson didn't write that movie either, but he did take on that role and was directed himself in it and delivered a great performance. You can see a not so good version of that in like another Mel Gibson movie, Passion of the Christ, which fine film, but abrasive to say the least. Waterworld,
okay.
another sort of vanity project from, the great Kevin Costner. Just certain things it's hard to necessarily define what a vanity project is, but from what I've read, what I saw, and I mean, again, like M. Night was so like, and this is not necessarily a bad thing in and of itself, that he was bothered that like Disney didn't want to take Disney, that it wasn't even that Disney wasn't going to give him the money. Disney was going to give him the money and let him do it. He just didn't like the vibe there, so he left, which speaks to his artistic credibility 100%. But then he had this guy write this book about like, and the book, it wasn't even like a post like retrospective thing. The book came out in 2006. So this book called A Man Who Hears Voices, or How M. Night Risked His Career on a Fairy Tale, like that's kind of like a rather bold title for someone who doesn't know the outcome. It's kind of
Hell yeah, it is.
a kind of a ballsy thing, in that he even had this guy like write this book is kind of like F you to them, which again is not necessarily bad. It's just all these things kind of clumped together. Just they to me personally, it's just like, man, you might have overstepped just a smidge, and again,
Overplayed his hand.
yes,
he overplayed his hand. Yeah,
and that's kind of what I'm getting at, where
Mhm.
all these elements combined make it. If it's, again, like I was talking about other stuff, if it's one or two things, they doesn't necessarily lead up to someone trying to make a point louder than they should. But I feel like all of this stuff coming together just kind of, from my perspective, it just doesn't necessarily look it doesn't look very flattering. And again, there are a lot of things that I like about this movie. There's a vibe to it that I genuinely enjoy. Paul Giamatti is great. We talked about how wonderful the score is. I like the creatures. I like the idea of this movie. I like the idea of creating a fairy tale from scratch. I think it's great. I think we should do more of that. I'm not saying this is a bad movie that should have never been made. I think, like I said, M. Night Shyamalan is very good in the acting in his role. Do I think he should he have given himself that specific role? I don't necessarily think that reflects well in hindsight. I just think it's an experiment, and maybe not an entirely successful one at that. And that's all I will say on that. And I will let you take it away, sir.
Right on, brother. Well, so straight up, I think that you're objectively correct that it's an experiment that didn't totally work, because it didn't. It didn't make money. It's not considered a Shyamalan classic, and it didn't get very good critical reviews. So objectively speaking, it didn't work. Now, you want to talk about somebody making a point louder than they should. That's what I'm going to do now. I do think that I actually really like sometimes when you and I have these disagreements, because I think sometimes I feel like I get to peek into a blind spot a little bit, and I appreciate that.
Same, sir.
You're right. Like, if you watch that and it makes you feel that way, and that's just how that makes you feel, then there's no logical argument against it, because that's just the way that thing made you feel. It's interesting just because from my perspective, and I understand that I'm kind of weird and I'm not quite the same way everyone else is all the time. From my perspective, it feels like like when I'm looking at other people, be like, can you believe M. Night Shyamalan thinks he's so important? I'm not saying you say this, but people are saying this. He thinks he's so important that he made himself a character who's going to change the world. Like, what a self-indulgent, narcissistic asshole. I think to myself, you're just projecting something you're imagining that may or may not be the case. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand it. So there's that. I think that that's an odd criticism that I don't think I'm ever going to quite understand. I see people do things like that, and I often feel like maybe I'm the odd man out, that there's a certain aspect of the way people tend to think about things that I don't always relate to. I also think that the movie critic thing, like, I think that could have been pulled off better. I think that some of the scenes with him are kind of cool. Like, I kind of like it when he's asking him for help finding the people, and he's giving this kind of blasé, sort of annoyed description of how story structures work and what you should be looking for. And, like, anything else I can tell you during my nap time. Like, I didn't hate that character. I thought he was kind of cool. I just think he should have been executed better. I think it's lame and weak as shit for movie critics to be in their feelings about that. And I think this movie averaging 4 out of 10 overall is a sign that the movie critics were deeply in their feelings about that, because I don't know. I think they were, and I don't think they should have been. I think that in a medium that lambasts everybody, that they can also be lambasted. And I think that all of this is taken away from the real, actual critical examination of the actual movie on screen, which I think you made a lot of good points about. Not all, there were bits that didn't work. There could have been more tension. We could have cut down on exposition a little bit. We could have hurried the pace a little bit. We could have had a little bit more conflict. Those are all real criticisms of this movie that I think are really fair. And I think that, if you go back in time and you give M. Night Shyamalan those notes and you could somehow convince him to believe you, I think he could have tightened up the movie and made it better. I do. I think those real notes could have made the movie better. So it's not like so it's interesting because I just to rip the Band-Aid, I'm giving this a 6 out of 10. This is a 3-star film to me. This is not a 4-star film. It's not a 5-star film. It's a 3-star movie. But I think it is a unique and artistically valid, and it's an enjoyable watch that I think does a lot of things that give me a little bit of a sense of wonder and magic in movies that I don't often get anymore. So, a movie can be a 5 out of 10 that's boring, or a movie can be a 5 out of 10 that's entertaining. And that's the difference between whether or not we want to watch it again sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And that to me is this movie. This movie is a 6 out of 10, but it's a 6 out of 10 with real artistic value. So ultimately, we don't actually end up landing very far apart as usual, but we seem to have a different sort of perspective on how the movie ultimately makes us feel.
Yeah, and I mean, I think honestly, like when I finished it, my gut reaction was, all right, that's a 6 out of 10. Like, but I sat with it and let certain things kind of settle a little bit more. And I'm very much in agreement with you that this is a unique film with just a fantastic concept, and we need more of that. We don't have a lot of that. And those 5 points I gave it are like 5 like strong points. There's a lot, like I said, that I like about this movie. And while it does take a good chunk of my final thoughts that I've written out here, very little of what I think is happening off screen is affecting my rating. My rating is very much what you talked about: exposition dumps, lack of tension, and me not necessarily knowing if this is exactly what, like I said, exactly who this film is geared towards. Because I think in a lot of ways it's a very adult movie. In a lot of ways it's a very kid-oriented movie with its fantastical elements and lack of roadblocks, for lack of a better word. So that's why it's, it really is like a never-ending story sort of thing. Or like trying to think if there are any other comps, but Neverending Story is probably a good one, where it's definitely got more adult themes, but has a lot of stuff geared towards kids too. But yeah, I'll never completely shit on a movie that has such a unique and original vision, which again is one of the things we love about M. Night Shyamalan, and is one of the reasons why we're doing this stretch of films on him. So that'll bring our total out to a 5.5 for Lady in the Water on the Jony Horror Podcast, which I think is not too unfair. Final question for you, sir. If we were going to go to the Jony Horror Drive-In and double feature Lady in the Water, what film would you double feature it with?
The Shape of Water. and I'm doing that one on the back half.
Nice. Good pick. Really good pick. Great
Yeah.
pick, actually. All
It's a
right.
fairy
So
tale, a water-based fairy tale. Yeah.
yeah, you took that and ran with it. I took the apartment complex and colorful characters and ran with it, and the mundane lifestyle, and our boy Alfred Hitchcock, and went with Rear
Oh, okay.
Window.
There you go. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
quite a double feature.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. I would I don't know, man. It's hard to pick which one would go where for me, honestly.
It'd be kind of hard to watch a cynical movie like Rear Window, like after watching this.
Yeah, that was my thought. I was like, yeah, I feel like we gotta start with Rear Window.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, yeah, because that final act of Lady in the Water is very uplifting. So, I want to leave your audience.
Hard to roll right into Rear Window
better. All right, man. Well, thank you so much, Kalen. This is a lot of fun. Definitely a little bit more spicy than our usual conversations, and I had kind of had a feeling it would be when I was writing my notes. I'm like, just asking for a heated discussion, if you will.
It's so funny because when I was watching this 2 days ago, I was like, I actually think this might be the farthest apart we are on any of these. Yeah, I wasn't sure, but I had that feeling. I'm like, Jony could land anywhere on this movie. Like, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, I wouldn't have been surprised if you had given this a 2, and I wouldn't have been surprised if you had given it an 8, because it's just a very weird movie with a lot of stuff going on.
Now I think that's really what it comes down to, is that there's so much going on in this movie that you can't hate it all or love it all, as far as I'm concerned. So, but anyways, always a pleasure, sir. This is a lot of fun. Looking to the future, we have 2 movies left on our docket, man. Next one up is Old, another one that I have not seen. So I am very much looking forward to that. We should be bringing that to you guys hopefully within the next month. I think if we can get our schedules all dialed in, we should be able to do that in May. And over on the Johnny Jaws cast, it is going to be the 50th anniversary of the best film of all time, one of the best films of all time, depending on who you ask. So we have some fun discussions coming up over there, and maybe we can get Kalen on with Brian and I, and we can talk some Jaws stuff. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
That would be fun.
Yeah, man. Well, until then, we are going to continue to look forward to having those conversations, and hopefully you are looking forward to listening to them. So, adios, muchachos.
Peace.